In the sterile air of the courtroom, James Carter stood in the dock, wrists bound by cold steel handcuffs, his heart pounding with a mix of defiance and dread. The judge's gavel had just fallen, silencing the murmurs of the gallery, when James, unable to resist, let slip the phrase that had become his mantra. "At least I still have my balls, Your Honor." A sharp hiss escaped the lips of his lawyer, Marcus Reed, a man whose hourly rate could bankrupt a small nation. From the corner of his eye, James caught Marcus's glare, a silent plea wrapped in exasperation. Marcus had begged him, practically groveled, to stop using that phrase. "It risks losing public sympathy," he'd said, his voice tight with the kind of restraint that comes from years of navigating courtrooms. Public sympathy, Marcus argued, could sway a judge toward a lighter sentence, maybe shave a year or two off the potential 8-year maximum for assault occasioning actual bodily harm. But James knew something Marcus didn't. From his vantage point in the dock, he had a clear view of the judge's face, and he'd seen it, the flicker of a smile, quickly hidden, the first time James had dropped his now infamous line. That smile, and the judge's fleeting glance toward the prosecution table, where the victim, Victor Langley, sat glowering, told James everything. The judge didn't like Victor either. "Your Honor, may I have another word with my client?" Marcus's voice cut through the tension, polite but strained. "I doubt it will do much good, Mr. Reed," the judge replied, his tone dry but laced with amusement. "Your last 3 attempts certainly haven't." This time, the judge didn't bother hiding his grin, and James felt a spark of hope. Marcus approached, leaning in close, his whisper sharp as a blade. "I get it, James. Victor's a smug bastard. I'd rather not be defending you against him either, but this is my job, and I'm telling you, stop antagonizing the court. You're not helping yourself." James shrugged, his lips twitching into a half-smile. Marcus was good, damn good, but he wasn't in this for the love of the game. His polished suits and perfect diction screamed privilege, a stark contrast to James's rough-around-the-edges demeanor. James was a what-a-get guy, raised on hard work and blunt honesty. Victor, on the other hand, was a condescending prick, the kind of man who thought his local fame as a former pro footballer gave him a free pass to do whatever he pleased. Marcus wasn't James's choice. He was a gift from James's best friend, Daniel, who'd set up a GoFundMe to cover the astronomical legal fees. Daniel wasn't rich. Far from it. Like James, he lived a comfortable but not extravagant life, or at least he had until 8 months ago, when James's world imploded, and he found himself behind bars. The GoFundMe had been a revelation. It started small, a desperate plea from Daniel to help his friend, but it exploded when the public caught wind of Victor's reputation. Seems a lot of people didn't like Victor Langley, and they were happy to throw money at the guy who'd taken him down a peg. When Victor tried to counter with his own crowdfunding campaign, it backfired spectacularly. His attempt to paint himself as the victim only highlighted what he'd done to provoke James's assault, and the public wasn't buying it. James, meanwhile, was swimming in fan mail, letters from strangers who saw him as a folk hero, a man who'd stood up to a bully and paid the price. And through it all, he clung to his mantra, "I still have my balls." The judge's voice pulled James back to the present. "Mr. Carter, your representative is correct. Your victim deserves more sympathy and respect than you're showing." But the twinkle in the judge's eye, visible only to James from his angle in the dock, told a different story. The judge was playing his part, but he wasn't buying Victor's act either. "I'm terribly sorry, Your Honor," James said, his voice dripping with mock contrition. "I was just stating facts. Have testicles. The guy I caught with my soon-to-be ex-wife does not. Unless he keeps them in a jar somewhere." The courtroom gasped, and the judge's eyes narrowed, a warning that James had pushed too far. But the look softened almost instantly, and James bit his tongue, heeding Marcus's advice for once. The judge continued, "Mr. Carter, you've pleaded guilty to assault occasioning actual bodily harm, which carries a maximum sentence of 8 years. Your lawyer has argued temporary insanity, claiming you weren't responsible for your actions. The court-ordered psychiatric evaluation suggests you're as sane as anyone, But it also notes that temporary insanity can be a— what was it? He glanced at his notes. A stimulus-driven autonomic phenomenon. James stayed silent, his lawyer's warnings ringing in his ears. The judge pressed on. We've heard the victim impact statement. Before I pass sentence, Mr. Carter, I want you to look me in the eye and tell me your story again. James nodded, his throat tight. Certainly, Your Honor. Or what I remember of it, anyway. He paused, his gaze drifting to the gallery where his wife, Emily, sat. Her eyes dropped to her lap, avoiding his stare. She hadn't been in court the first time he'd told the story, probably hoping to dodge the public humiliation. Now she was stuck, torn between fleeing and staying to play the supportive wife, perhaps hoping for forgiveness. James had no intention of granting it. She'd made her choice, and now she'd face the consequences alone. Her infidelity laid bare for the world to see. It started at a bar, James began, his voice steady but laced with bitterness. Me, Emily, and some friends were having a good time. Then Victor, the victim, walks up, bold as brass, and asks Emily to dance. Didn't even glance at me, didn't ask if I minded. I wasn't thrilled, but I let it slide. They danced a couple of times. She came back to the table and I thought that was that. Until she disappeared later that night. He stopped, the memory hitting him like a punch to the gut. Even now, months later, the betrayal burned. I found out she'd left with him. Some people knew where Victor lived, so I went there. His fancy car was in the garage, door wide open like they couldn't wait to get inside. The house door was unlocked too. I didn't break in, Your Honor, I just walked in. No mention of forced entry in the police report, the judge confirmed, his tone neutral. My memory gets foggy from there, James said, careful to maintain the narrative Marcus had crafted. I remember walking through the house, getting angrier with every step. I heard noises from upstairs, probably a bedroom. I remember standing at the bottom of the staircase, then nothing until the police showed up. I don't know if what's in my head is real or just what the cops told me happened. In truth, James remembered every second. The sounds of intimacy drifting from the bedroom, the creak of the stairs as he climbed, the open door revealing Emily, naked and unashamed, with Victor. The sight had snapped something inside him, a primal rage he couldn't control. He'd been a rugby fullback in his youth, known for his precise, powerful kicks. That skill hadn't left him. He'd aimed true, and Victor's reaction, lurching forward, knocking Emily into the headboard, collapsing in agony, was seared into James's memory. The look of horror on Victor's face as he realized what James had done was worth every day in jail. Marcus had built his defense on the idea that James's confession was coerced, signed when he was too distraught to think clearly. The police, Marcus argued, had taken advantage of James's mental state, planting memories of the assault by repeating their version of events. It was a long shot, but Marcus was a master at sowing doubt. The judge spoke again. Mr. Carter, it's undisputed that you were at the scene and that you rendered first aid to the victim, which aligns with your character, as attested by 3 witnesses. It's also undisputed that you caused injuries requiring the surgical removal of the victim's testicles. The only question is your state of mind at the time. James held his breath as the judge continued. The statutory penalty is 8 years, but I can consider the provocation you faced and your mental state. As for deterrence, I doubt you'll ever face such egregious provocation again. His gaze flicked to Emily, his expression one of undisguised contempt. She seemed to shrink further into her seat, alone, her friends conspicuously absent. James's case had become a media circus. Victor's fame as a former footballer had drawn initial attention, but the story of a wronged husband striking back resonated with the public. The GoFundMe, fueled by wealthy donors who'd also been humiliated by Victor, had grown to 6 figures, with thousands more tossing in spare change. The headlines, "Husband Fights Back, David vs. Goliath," kept the story alive, turning Emily into a pariah and James into a reluctant hero. The judge's voice snapped James out of his thoughts. "Mr. Carter, I find that you were temporarily insane at the time of the assault. I sentence you to time served and 3 years probation. You're a free man." The courtroom erupted in applause. James turned to Marcus, stunned. "What the hell? You lucky bastard," Marcus said, shaking his hand. "He bought the insanity plea. You're out." The bailiff, grinning, clapped James on the back as he was processed out. "Glad you still have your balls, man," he whispered, pointing James to a back exit to avoid the media. Outside, James spotted Victor holding a press conference on the courthouse steps. His lawyer at his side, cameras rolling. "I vow to appeal this travesty of justice," Victor declared. "I'll launch a civil suit to clear my name. Sleeping with married women isn't a crime." James approached, unnoticed at first in his civilian clothes. The size difference, Victor towered over him by 100 pounds, was stark, but as James stepped into his space, Victor flinched, tripped, and fell flat on his back. The cameras swiveled to capture the moment. James smiled down at him. "Good luck with the appeal. Win or lose, I'll still have my balls." The headlines the next day were merciless. "Husband keeps his balls. Ballsy underdog humiliates disgraced star." The GoFundMe swelled, and James hired the best civil lawyer money could buy, bracing for Victor's inevitable lawsuit. But it never came. One night, over a beer at his local bar, a large man approached, his shadow looming. "Don't turn around," he said, his voice low. "I'm with a group that helps wronged husbands. We had a chat with Victor. He's decided not to sue." James didn't ask questions. He offered a beer, but the man declined and left. "Nice to have friends," James muttered, smiling into his drink. Victor's career tanked. Dropped from the major league, he languished in the minors. His earnings a fraction of what they'd been. A year later, he surfaced on a late-night talk show. His voice higher, his frame diminished. He'd been caught taking banned testosterone supplements, earning a suspension after slapping an opponent who'd taunted him about his missing balls. Soon after, he was sacked, fading into obscurity. Emily fared no better. Her friends and family abandoned her, unwilling to be tainted by her notoriety. The media painted her as the ultimate betrayer, and strangers heckled her in the streets. She tried to flee, but James's lawyer, funded by the GoFundMe, blocked her from taking their kids. Her drinking spiraled, culminating in a DUI when she crashed through her garage door. The media had a field day, especially when photos showed kids' play equipment next to her wrecked car. James's lawyer convinced a judge that Emily was unfit, and custody went to James's parents, with whom he now lived, ensuring his kids had a stable home. Emily sent birthday and Christmas cards, but the kids ignored them. She eventually left town, a broken woman. James, meanwhile, found love again with Anna, a Ukrainian refugee who'd fled with her children and nieces after losing her sister in the war. Anna loved him for who he was, not his infamy. Late at night, after moments of intimacy, she'd whisper, "I'm glad you still have your balls, James." And he'd laugh, knowing he'd found something real.